what I'm going to show you in this video is how to graft trees, mainly apple trees. And grafting is the process of joining two different parts of an apple tree, or two different parts of a tree or plant together. It's commonly done with apples because you have the rootstock, which is an apple tree that we know how it grows, and they tend to not have very romantic names. So the most common ones are MM106, M9, M25, M27, and they control the height of the tree. They also offer some disease resistance as well. So what you want to do is you want to join on the type of apple that you want to eat or cook with on top of the rootstock that you know the height it's going to grow. It's a process that's been around a long time, and there's evidence going back to the Romans used to do it. So the reason you want to do it is that it controls the height of the tree, it controls how fast it's going to grow and produce fruit, and it also offers some pest and disease resistance, but it'll give you the fruit that you want. If you grew this as an apple tree, it would grow apples, but it wouldn't be the type of fruit that you want. And the thing with apples is there's a Brayburn that I bought from the supermarket, is they need other apple trees to cross-pollinate with them. So like humans, they need two people's genetics to make a fruit and make an offspring. So if you sowed the seeds from this, it would be a mix of the parents, just like humans, a mix of the parents. So you wouldn't get a Brayburn, you would get a Brayburn and something else. So you can't guarantee, and there is no guarantee, that the apple that you would grow from a pip would be the same as what it is, the fruit that you're eating. More likely, and it'll be completely unique as an apple. So the only way to get an apple the exact same as what you've got, such as a Brayburn or a Bramley, is to take a cutting of it or graft it. The problem with taking a cutting, like a hardwood cutting, is that the tree will be huge. It'll most likely grow on its own roots, it'll grow very large, and that's a bit of a problem for a small garden, or if you want to pick the apples, or if you want to train it. So if you graft it onto a rootstock, you get all those properties that you want. We need a few things to be able to do this. So we need a good pair of secateurs. I prefer the ones that go to a point on when we're grafting trees, because you can get in neat and get in close and create a nice cut. Those have been cleaned with some wire wool, oiled and sharpened before. You need a Stanley knife, which is what I found the best for grafting. I have got a lovely Opinel knife here, which is a lovely thing, but it tends to have a curve on the blade, which means you tend to, when we get onto it, you tend to get a scoop, and you need a flat cut from both to join. You tend to get a scoop with these, which is not great. It's a lovely thing, but it's not my favourite thing for grafting. You need some Angel or something to sanitise this with, so you're not passing on diseases from one to another. And you need some top material, so the fruit that you want. So these are branches of this year's growth of an apple tree that we know. This one is Charleston Pippin, which is a Yorkshire apple from between Wakefield and Pontefract, and this is called the scion material, SCION. That's called the scion, and that's the bit that will give you the fruit that you want. This bit is the rootstock, this bit is the scion, and they come in various different widths depending on how the tree is grown. So this one's pretty similar. You should be able to see that one's pretty similar to his rootstock. This one is Devonshire Quarrenden that somebody's given me, which is a lot thicker. So this wouldn't be suitable for growing on this rootstock. This one needs to grow a bit bigger and a bit fatter, or you need to get another one so you can match them up perfectly. This rootstock I've grown in a pot. What often happens though is that they're dug up out of the ground as bare roots, and you would wrap the roots in a plastic bag or wrapper to stop them drying out whilst you're working. I actually find it easier in the bag, to use it in the bag, because you can turn this over and manipulate into the position you want for grafting. But I'll keep it in the pot for now because I think it makes it stable for the video, and we'll see how it goes. So what is really important with the grafting, and we tend to do, the best method I've found is there's various different ways, but the best method I've found of success is the whip and tongue method, which is like a Z. So you open up a Z cut on each side and you fit them both together, one on the rootstock and one on the scion material, and you fit them both together and then you tape them together. So I'm hoping I'll be able to demonstrate that for you. So what you want to do is get your knife and just cut away, I'll show you this to start with, cut away from yourself, and hopefully you can see there this green layer. This green layer is the cambium layer. So that's the area that is growing, that's actively growing, we know that's growing, and that's where, and the sap's moving in there. So it's important that the green layer on your scion material matches the green layer on your rootstock. If it doesn't, the sap won't be able to flow between the two, and this will fail and it won't grow. So that it has to touch, you have to get good contact, what they call good cambium contact, which is the two have to stick together. So you have to get them touching, and then what will happen is the tree will naturally heal, it'll know it's a wound and it'll heal, it'll be able to do that there, and then the sap will flow between the two. And we tend to do the grafting in late spring, so March time, because the tree is going to start coming into active growth. So as it warms up, the sap's going to start flowing up here, and when you take a bit off and you attach this to it, it'll heal, the sap will flow up and will encourage the sap to flow into this scion material, and then this will grow, and then the tree is away and it's taken. But that can only happen if that green material, the green cambium layer, is touching the green cambium layer on here. So you want a decent height from the soil up to where you're going to make your first cut, and I tend to make a straight cut and then we'll cut it at an angle from there. So you're looking to have a bud or a node, the proper term, on one side of it, rather than a big portion of internode, because we know there's a lot of hormones for growth around where the bud is. So you're looking at about a hand, usually about a hand or secateurs from the ground. So I'm looking at this one and thinking this one's probably about right. So, but you also want to leave yourself, if I get this one wrong, that there's a bit more space to work in down here, so I can cut this one off and still go down, and I'm not working at ground level. The reason you do that is because you don't want the scion material to be close to the ground and it put out roots. So if it puts out roots, it'll grow on its own roots, and then you won't get all the benefits of the root stock. So I'm going to get my secateurs and I'm going to make a nice clean cut across there, and a flat cut for now. So I want to get rid of this rootstock because I don't want it, and if I drop it on the table and get it mixed up with my scion material, I could end up grafting the rootstock back onto the rootstock that I've taken off, which is not what I want. So I'm going to throw that out of the way so it can't get mixed up. And then we're going to go at an angle and get a sloping cut. What I want is this to taper from the start of where I cut it, make an incision there. I want it to taper, and you just gently do it, and I want it to taper right down to as thin as possible at that end. Now, like I said, this is usually much easier if I can do it in a bag, because I can hold it under my arm and move it about, but that's not looking too bad. So it wants to be smooth all the way off, and you want to check it all the different angles. There we go, and hopefully you should be able to see the green cambium layer there around the edge, with the darker green bit around the edge. So into that, about a third of the way down, so looking about a third of the way, so that's about half. Try and divide it into thirds roughly, and this is a nice clean new blade I've put in. What you want to do is and you have to be careful of this because you tend to be cutting towards yourself here, is you get the blade and you rock the blade up and down. Don't push it, because you tend to have a habit of going like that and not only risking cutting yourself but going straight down the rootstock. So this is the hardest bit, I think, because the natural reaction is to push it in, but if you rock gently, it'll go in. So let's have a look. And you want to cut that, so it's about then halfway, so a third. You start cutting at a third and then you're about halfway in. Now hopefully you can get that in, you can see that it's like a bit of a Z there. So the plan is that we'll get us sign material. This one matches up really nice actually in terms of size. The beauty of doing it with the styling knife is when you get really good, if you've got a thick rootstock but only a thin scion, something like this for example, you can do it onto the side. You can make a cut on the side and drop it on, so you can do that and play about with it. With some of the tools that make the cut for you, you have to have them matched up exactly. Now this would work quite well on here, but in terms of technique you have to then get the rootstock exactly the same as the scion, and that's not always possible, I've found. So I'll just cut the bottom of this off just to give me a nice bit of a clean edge to work to, a straight edge. And again I've got the node there on the outside to work to, and I want to try and match that up in length so it's going to fit on there. So try and line it up the best you can without it touching. Not easy to do while I'm demonstrating. And then I'm going to cut again this off at a flat angle, gently at a flat angle, to try and match up with this one, with this rootstock. So gently down to a thin end, so as thin as you can get it at the end, and it should be you try and get it a regular slope, so it's not going up and down, it's not scooped out, it's a regular flat. And sometimes it does take a bit of playing about with and looking at from different angles, and just be patient with it and enjoy it. It's supposed to be an enjoyable activity, it's not something to rush. And I caught it there, so just take that bit off. Now that should hopefully line up something like that. The reason you don't want any slopes, you want a clean slope and no dips and hollows, or no scoop, which is what the Opinel knife does, is that you leave air gaps. It doesn't match up correctly, so you leave a gap of air and the tree won't heal around that. It'll either miss it and the whole thing won't grow, or it'll leave a wound which infection and things like that might get in. So you need it to match up like that, and when you push it together you should be able to see no air gaps, hopefully. So the next thing I need to do is I need to line up that cut that I made, that zigzag cut, with where it's going to be on here, because I want them to match up. So we're looking at about a third again down here. I'll try and do it for you so you can see it. And remember, it's that rocking motion rather than forcing it, just gently rocking. You don't need to apply, honestly I'm applying hardly any pressure, if in fact none, to the knife. The knife is doing all the work. And there we go, that's left us. Hopefully you can see that with a little bit of the zigzag. So what that should do is, if we look at, is if we just gently push them together, they'll fit together. Hopefully you can see that, and once they're taped up it should push that right neat together with no air gaps. Once I've taped it up, I'll trim this back down. The next thing to do now we've joined them together is to wrap it with tape. Now this is grafting tape, special grafting tape that I bought. It's not expensive. If you're struggling to get hold of it, you can use a plastic bag, this kind of material that you can pull and stretch. Don't use sellotape or something that's adhesive. This is not adhesive because it can damage the bark, and we need that wound to heal under there. What this is going to do is it's going to hold the rootstock and the scion together. It's going to hold them together so there's no air gaps. So we're going to get that good cambium contact. The sap's going to flow up there and they're going to join together, and this is going to take, this sion's going to take. Now I need to take a length of this, and it's good stuff. It will just pull apart rather than having to cut it with a knife. And you need to be patient about this and precise about it. So you start below, just at the bottom, so below, at the bottom should I say, and you want to have the bottom bit of the tape wrapping over your first bit of your join of your scion, where your sion's joining the rootstock, so you're not moving it out of place. And you want to pull it round, keeping it as open as you can, as tight as possible, without, it has a habit of wanting to curve itself up, so you've got to try and keep it as open as you can because you want it to cover as much of it as possible. What you can do is, if you haven't cut enough tape, you can just put some more on, and that's absolutely fine. And you want to wrap it as tight as you can, because if you pull it too tight you're going to snap the tape. But if you want to pull it, because you want to hold them both together. What you don't want to happen is you don't want them to rock or slip, and you want to keep them touching, that cambium touching together, in order for that sap to join them both together. There we go. And give it a good wrap round, and then you tie a knot in it. Just wrap it over and pull it through. Sometimes I tie knots in it twice because I like to be a bit precise, but and secure, but it's not really necessary. It tends to hold itself, and actually sometimes if you do tie it twice, it's harder to get off when it's joined in somewhere. So there we go, that's held together. I'm quite confident that those are touching. They're touching well, the cambium's in good contact, the sap's going to come up here and it's going to now flow into the scion material, and these buds are going to break because the tree wants to grow from the top. I'm quite confident about that, so I'm happy about that wrap. So what I want to do is count 3 buds, 3 nodes above there, and I'm going to cut the top at an angle. So I don't need these top 2, because the more above there is, the more chances of this scion material drying out before the sap can get up to it. And I've got something to help prevent it drying out as well, which I'll do in the next step. So a nice angled cut, we always cut at an angle at the top, throw that away, so that's nice and clean. I'm quite happy with that. And then I'll do the final steps and explain about the aftercare of how we help this grow. But you're doing a lot of cuts, so it's important to maintain the hygiene. So between planting on here, so this is clean, I've cleaned it of all of the material. Between this one and doing the next graft, I will put some alcohol gel in here and clean the secateurs, and I'll also do the same on the Stanley knife. And what's that going to do is it's going to prevent some pests, but more importantly prevent disease passing on between the two, because these have been given to me. I've not seen the trees of some of these. Some of the ones I've got trees off, I think they're okay, but they might have a disease. Canker is the biggest problem in apples, so and we don't want to pass that on. So by sterilising these and maintaining good levels of hygiene, we're going to prevent pests and diseases being passed on. The final part of the grafting process at this stage is to prevent this scion material from drying out, because obviously it's got no roots and that sap's not going to flow straight into there. It could be a few weeks before it gets going properly. Hopefully it starts straight away, but the weather's going to dictate that. So what you want to do is get some wax, so you can get proper grafting wax. I've got some beeswax. I've used beeswax quite a bit every year I've done it, and it's been absolutely fine. And I melt it in the microwave. I've got a little brush that I keep every year for this process, and I'm going to cover the whole scion, buds and everything, in the wax. And as the wax is going on, it's drying up straight away. You can probably see it there. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep the moisture in. It won't damage the scion at all, and it's going to keep the moisture in. You have to work relatively quick because it does dry quickly in the bowl and on the brush. But you want to cover every little bit, even the buds, the nodes. It doesn't matter if covering those, they're absolutely fine. They will, once they burst into life, they'll push through the wax. You'll see them just push off the wax. And you can eventually, when you know it's taken, the graft is taken, you can gently peel off the wax. And it can be sometimes a bit bitty and a bit messy. In my usual way, I like it to be very neat, but the way it dries doesn't always pan out like that. So there we go. That is all waxed. It's already set. I sometimes also wax down over the over where I've got the tape on as well, just to seal that in, but that's not necessary really, because the tape has done it. I've covered the top bit of the tape so no water can run down the scion and into the tape and rot that before it takes. What I need to do now is I need to label it. I need to label it with what the type of rootstock is. So this is MM106 and we know this is Charleston Pippin, so I need to label it Charleston Pippin MM106. I tend to label it on the tree itself and label it in the pot as well, in case when you lose one. If you lose one, you've got that one. If you lose that one, you've got another one. And then when I plant them out, I make a note of what they are and where they are. It's important to note the rootstock as well as the type of apple, because when you come to planting it and what you're going to use it for, if you plant it in the wrong place, you might get a smaller tree than you want or a bigger tree, etc. So in order to make this work and to keep this growing, you've got some what they call post-propagation aftercare requirements. So this one is in a pot, so that's absolutely fine. If it was bare root, you'd either plant it into a pot, or you would plant it in the ground. At college we tend to plant them in the ground, and then you need to give them a good soaking, give them a good watering in, and you're going to water them regular, not over water them, but water them regular, particularly throughout the first few months. You're going to, if any of these buds below the scion, so the buds, the nodes on the rootstock, if they start to burst, what you want to do is you want to rub them off with your thumb. So go along and rub them off, and what that does is it thinks, oh, that bud's gone, so it pushes the sap further up and it forces it to use these ones above. Now I've tended to find that on every one I've done, I've had to rub off the buds. As soon as you see them, just rub them off and just knock them off, and it'll eventually resort to growing from there. Once they start growing from there and you've knocked these off after the first year, you have to, the first year or even by midsummer, you're absolutely fine. You want to put a cane in alongside it when you plant it out, because the scion can, in windy weather, if it's exposed, it can blow and knock it off, and I have had that happen a couple of times actually with the ones that I didn't cane. So you put a cane in and you gently tie a cane to it, so just support it so it doesn't blow off, so you tie it to the rootstock and to there so it doesn't blow away too much. Once this is taken and you're into summer, what you can do is you want to gently then, the wax should have come off by then. If it hasn't all come off, you just peel it off, and you want to take off this tape, because if you leave the tape on, what the danger is that then it'll start to stay moist under there and it'll rot. So you've got your scion taking, your tree growing, and that'll be your weak point, and that's when so if you take it off, it'll heal. Once you get the air to it, like a wound on skin of a human, it'll heal, so it needs that. So your aftercare requirements are, you want to pot it up or plant it out, give it a good water, you want to stake it with a cane, making sure you're supporting both of them. You want to remove this plastic wrap once it's taken, so that's summer, July, somewhere like that, and you want to rub off any of these buds. That's one of the most important steps in getting it to work, is to rub off these low buds off the rootstock. And then you should have your own grafted apple tree.